within a week. And finally, if you are having any technical difficulties, please contact our help desk. Their contact information can be found on the screen. Thank you for your time, and that is all I have.
Thank you, McKenna. We'll move on to item number 3, which is the Colorado River update by Mr. McInnes. You're up.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chairman Collins. Good morning, everybody, members of the council. Again, for the record, my name is Craig McInnes. I'm a water resources specialist with the department's Colorado River Management section. We'll be going through a status update on the Colorado River this morning. Next slide, please. Looking at system-wide status updates as of September 19th, what you see on the chart, Lake Powell elevation was 3547.06. That is 7.377 million acre feet at 30% of capacity there. Looking down at Lake Mead, we're at elevation 1067.63 feet. That is 9.012 million acre feet, 35% of storage. I also looked at that as of, it would have been yesterday morning now. Mead was at 1067.53. That's down about 1/10 of a foot. Powell was down about 1.1 feet from what you see on the screen. Other upper basin reservoirs were also down slightly. That is consistent with operations this time of the year outside of the runoff season. Looking in the top left corner, as compared to this time last year, we are down about 6 million acre feet in storage, or roughly 10% system-wide. Next slide, please. Here we see a chart for snow water equivalent in the upper basin primarily. This was as of September 22nd. We see in the blue line, 2021, we peaked at 89% of median as of March 30th. You can see how that compares to 2018 in the teal, 2019 above average year in the yellow, 2020 in the green, which is just about median right there in the purple. This was likely due, or not likely, it was due to antecedent soil conditions. We saw an 89% peak of snow water equivalent, translating into average or an annual inflow of about 33%. So that explains that discrepancy there. Next slide, please. Looking here, we see unregulated inflows into Lake Powell in both what was observed, most likely now that we are 2 days removed to the end of the water year of 2021, as well as forecasts into water year 2022. You see there the 3.56 million acre foot projected end of water year total, that 33% figure. That is the third driest on record. It had been flirting with 1977 that you see out there as the second driest year on record since Glen Canyon Dam was completed and filled, but it beat it out only slightly. So that is not a great shred of good news, but it's third driest year on record since then, not the second. We can look at the water to year 2022 probables based on the September 24-month study. Most probable 50th percentile, 8.2 million acre feet, 76%. We can see the minimum and maximum range, which is the 10th and 90th percentile based on those, based on that run. We can also see the 10.83 million acre feet average over the term 1981 to 2010. Reclamation will be moving forward with the 9.6 million acre feet stat, which reflects the 1991 to 2020 average. So we will see how that affects percentages of both observed and projected into the future. You could see on the the black parentheses versus the purple, and how that affects probabilities or percentages. So again, we see the dark blue, which is the full unregulated inflow, and then the light blue in these graphs is the April to July unregulated inflow, and see how those compare. That'll be it for this slide. Next slide, please. Looking into Lake Powell end of month elevations based on the September 24-month study, we see the most probable end of calendar year 2020 projection at 3536.62 feet elevation. That's 27% of capacity, with the min to max range of 3536.01 to 3538.59 for the end of calendar year 2021. Looking out to most probable end of year calendar year 22 projections, the most probable is 3537.26, which is up to 28% capacity, with the min to max range of 3496.56 to 3614.2. We will acknowledge that all of these in the September 21 model 24-month study assumes the 181,000 acre feet of releases pursuant to the Drought Response Operations Agreement in the Upper Basin. but they don't make any such assumptions of operations like that into the future. You see there that the 8.23 million acre feet year release year in water year 2021 is reflected, and each of them have the 7.48 million acre foot mid elevation release tier condition baked in for water year 2022. That'll be it for this slide. Next slide, please. Looking at to a similar chart for Lake Mead based on the September 24-month study, we have the most probable end of calendar year 21 projection at 1066.09 feet. That's 34% full with a min to max range of 1065.82 to 1066.76 feet. Moving into the end of calendar year 2022 projection, most probable of 1050.68 with the min to max range of 1047.9 to 1061.19. That will be it for this slide. Looking into side inflows in the lower basin, these intervening flows from Glen Canyon to Hoover dams, essentially the Grand Canyon Reach. We see that we underperformed the 5-year average from 2016 to 2020 up until July. We started getting into the green there in July 21 and August 21, largely reflective of the monsoon activity there in the region. One thing to note here with the June figure, that was a negative number that occurs in the LC's gain-loss model when there's an overall loss in that reach, essentially meaning that losses due to evap and similar factors end up being greater than the gains seen in precipitation and runoff. Looking into the projections for the end of water year and calendar year 2021, those are at 70 and 75% respectively. Next slide. These are the Lake Powell 5-year probability tables, but put out from the August 2021 CRSS run that was rolled out by Reclamation last week on the 22nd. We see that compared to the one that we see in June, which reflects both the stress test and the full hydrology in these tables, Reclamation will only be moving forward with projecting and modeling out the stress test hydrology from here on out. Also, again, noting that we are in the 100% probability it's locked in of a mid-elevation release tier of 7.4 million acre feet released from Glen Canyon Dam in 2022. We see in 2023, based on this run, that we have a 38% probability of going back to back in that tier, with a 16% probability of bumping up to upper elevation balancing tier, and a 47% probability of going down into lower elevation balancing tier at Lake Powell for water year 2023. You can see the probabilities going out through 2026 on the remainder of the slide. For those of you looking for good news, we are up to 6% of equalization tier conditions in 2025 and 26, which is up from 4% of the 2025 figure seen in June. Next slide, please. Looking here at Lake Mead probabilities, again, August 21 model run. We see a tier 1 shortage locked in for 2022. Also looking into 2023, we see a 97% probability of any amount of shortage in 2023, broken up by 75% probability from this run of tier 1, moving in 2020 or 22% in 2023. Again, we see a percentage probability of shortage in any amount through the years 2026 over 90%, getting into a 41% probability of a third tier shortage in 25 and 26, again, based on the model run here. Next slide, please. I went through that a little bit quick. I'm happy to take any questions at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do the members have any questions for Mr. McInnes? Hearing none. Thank you, Craig, for your presentation. And that will move us on to the Arizona Water Bank Authority preliminary 2022 plan of operation presentation by Ms. O'Connell. Virginia, you're up.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. So this is the time of year that we bring our preliminary plan of operation to the council and the public for comment. We request comments either verbally or written, whatever your choice. And then the final plan is going to come out in with the bank at the December meeting. So next slide, please. So as Craig pointed out, next year we will be in a Tier 1 shortage condition. With that, the water bank will not have excess CAP water available for storage. So we will continue to achieve our goals through other means, including purchasing long-term storage credits and purchasing intentionally created surplus firming credits with the Gila River Indian community. Those are done pursuant to an agreement we have with the community under DCP as part of the offset component of Arizona's implementation plan for DCP. With our first ever shortage in 2022, the water bank will also have its first firming requirement, and that is firming for the Gila River Indian community for their non-Indian agricultural supplies. So next slide, please. So we'll continue to include the recharge rates in the plan of operation, even though we don't have water to store. These rates are used to determine the credit purchase rates for next year based on the agreements that we currently have in place. And so the water delivery rate is $242 per acre foot. And then the CAP rates for both the Phoenix AMA and the Tucson AMA are $13 and $15 per acre foot respectively. So based on those rates, and then accounting for the 5% cut to the aquifer plus roughly 1% in losses, we're looking at a credit purchase rate of roughly $271 per acre foot in the Phoenix AMA and $273 per acre foot in the Tucson AMA. So next slide, please. So these are the funding sources that we have available for the 2022 plan. Under the withdrawal fees, they include the transfer of funds being made available to Department of Water Resources. That's $1.2 million. That's a legislative transfer. So as a result, we will have roughly $866,000 available in Phoenix AMA withdrawal fees. Those monies will be utilized to purchase ICS firming credits with the Gila River Indian community. The rate for next year is a little over $260 per acre foot. If you recall, under that agreement, we agreed to purchase 50,000 acre feet of ICS created by the community for firming purposes. Due to a one-time 10% evaporation loss that results in 45,000 acre feet of ICS firming credits. So we've purchased roughly 29,000 acre feet of ICS firming water now. So we've been doing that bit by bit over the years until we purchase the full 50,000. In the Tucson AMA, we anticipate having 396,000. That does include a little carryover from this year, and we propose to purchase credits, long-term storage credits, roughly 1,450 acre feet. For the water storage tax, or also known as the 4-cent tax, in the CAWCD board, under their resolution that they adopted in June, they reserve $4 million in the Phoenix AMA or Maricopa County for long-term storage credit purchases by the water bank. We're looking at a target amount of 14,740 acre feet of credits. In the Tucson AMA, they reserve $3 million, and that could result in 10,970 acre feet of credits. So the total cost of next year's plan is $8.26 million, and we anticipate developing 30,140 acre feet of credits. So next slide, please. So this table is a little different than you've seen in previous years. We're now reflecting not just credit accrual by the bank, but also some credits that we anticipate distributing in order to meet our firming responsibilities. We also, rather than showing the targets that the firming targets that we've been showing, that showed percentage of goal met. Those were targets that we developed back in 1997. We're now looking more towards including potential firming volumes over the next 100 years. These ranges that you see here was based on modeling that we presented back in December. And we anticipate going forward that these numbers can change based on new information that we have from a hydrology standpoint, but also from potentially the next operating criteria on the Colorado River. So the Tier 1 shortage does not result in any credits distributed for CAP M&I firming. As well for the on-river firming, but we do, as I mentioned earlier, have a firming requirement for the Gila River Indian community. We're looking at distributing or extinguishing 8,112 acre-feet of credits. These are firming credits that we developed on reservation. It was pursuant to an agreement where we agreed to pay the full cost for delivery of water, of the community's water to the reservation. So including both O&M and energy in those costs. So the 8,112 are the best estimates that we have right now. These could change based on the final orders that are submitted with CAP after they review all the orders that are submitted October 1. We're now also showing the potential that we could be firming in the future for the White Mountain Apache. That's 3,750 acre-feet per year. That settlement will become enforceable April 30th, 2023. We're also showing the potential firming for the Hualapai Indian tribe, 557.5 acre-feet per year. This has been identified, but that legislation has not yet been approved. It's making its way through Congress. And then the future settlements, the 4,400 that you see there, that's the difference between the 8,724 that was our requirement for future settlements before the White Mountain Apache and Hualapai have been identified. So for the federal assistance, we were required to provide $3 million to Reclamation to assist them in meeting their obligation to the Tohono O'odham Nation. We did that in the form of accruing long-term storage credits. We accrued over 34,000 acre-feet of credits. The Reclamation can request distribution of those credits in order to meet their firming requirements, but they have not done that at this point for the 2022 firming requirements that they have. So we've shown how many credits that we have specifically for CAP M&I firming. Those are the 4-cent tax credits. What we've specifically dedicated for the tribal settlements and the general fund credits that we have accumulated for on-river firming. The groundwater management credits that you see at the bottom, those are the withdrawal fee credits. They can be used to firm both CAP M&I supplies as well as meeting tribal settlement obligations if the credits that we have are insufficient. So in the Phoenix and Pinal AMA, those are likely to be used to meet our Indian settlement obligations. In the Tucson AMA, because we've always been behind in meeting that obligation, we're most likely going to use that to meet our CAP M&I firming responsibilities. So one thing I would like to point out, while it doesn't impact the bank this year as far as credit distribution, but activities that are happening for mitigation for the Pinal AMA, the Urban to Ag or USF to GSF, those agreements under DCP require the bank to exchange its credits with those entities that have entered into that agreement to store water in the Pinal AMA. So it's the total credits, I believe overall would be just over 43,000 acre feet of credits. And so we will be accruing more credits in the Pinal AMA. So not next year, but that following year, after the storage occurs, you will see a shift in the amount of credits that we have in the Phoenix and Tucson AMAs, and that will shift, those credits will shift to the Pinal AMA, increasing that total. So that's what I have on there. The next slide is really just to answer any questions that you might have on the presentation today. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Do the members have any questions for Virginia on her presentation? Hearing none, should you have questions later, you can put them in the chat box. Thank you, Virginia, for your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And with that, we will move on to the item number 5, groundwater withdrawal fee recommendations and the WMAP. Kyle, if you'll go ahead and give us a presentation on that.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. As you said, I'll be providing a Water Management Assistance Program update, and we'll be requesting your recommendation for 2022 withdrawal fees. Withdrawal fees for year 2021 are set at $3 per acre foot, as they have been for the past several years. Of that, 65 cents per acre foot goes towards the Water Management Assistance Program, and $2.35 goes towards the Irrigation and Efficiency Fund. No amount goes towards admin and enforcement. Today, GUAC members are asked to make a recommendation to the ADWR director regarding the rate of withdrawal fees for reporting year 2022, which will be collected in calendar year 2023. And for your reference, this table here provides the withdrawal fee rates and money collected from the past 5 years. The highlighted sections under 2022 are the withdrawal fee statutory framework that we're working within. So the component of the fee that goes towards the WMAP, and that's money set aside for conservation, augmentation, and research of water availability in the AMA, cannot exceed $2 per acre foot. The Irrigation Efficiency Fund component cannot exceed $2.50 per acre foot, and the admin and enforcement component cannot exceed $1 per acre foot. Below that table is a breakdown of the current Water Management Assistance Program fund. The current balance in that fund is $199,884, of which $105,000 is committed. That includes $30,000 for the NREC renewal that was approved at our previous meeting. That leaves us a total balance of $94,884 available in the WMAP fund. Going down to the groundwater, before I do that, the projects that are currently funded by the WMAP funds are the Irrigation Management Service, which has a remaining balance of $60,000, Natural Resources Education Center, which has a remaining balance of $15,000, and the Pinal County Water Augmentation Authority, who received $200,000 in May. Looking at the groundwater conservation grants, and as a little update there, since we last met, a draft contract was sent to the Maricopa-Stanfield Irrigation and Drainage District for review, and we're still waiting for some feedback on that contract, and that is our last groundwater conservation grant project that needs to be executed. So we're wrapping up those contracts and moving on to the next phase there as well. Before asking the members to recommend a withdrawal fee rate for the reporting year 2022, we'll be happy to answer any questions on this document or anything that I've presented on.
Do the members have any questions for Kyle with respect to his presentation on the current WMAP funded projects and groundwater withdrawal fee information? Hearing none, I would propose at this point that we make a recommendation to maintain the current groundwater withdrawal fee funding levels at their current level that we had in 2021. Is there any discussion from the members?
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian Hartman. Do you need a motion for that recommendation?
Yes, Brian, if you would, please.
Yeah, I so move.
This is
Brian.
Steve Miller will second that.
We have multiple seconds from Steve Miller and Brian Rhodes, I believe. I would go ahead and like to have a roll call vote. We'll start with Supervisor Miller. Indicate by saying A or nay.
Aye.
Brian Hartman,
Aye.
Brian Rhodes.
Aye.
And I will vote aye also. We have a majority vote in favor. Thank you, gentlemen. With that, we move on to item number 6, which is the GWAICC update by Jenna Norris. Ms. Norris.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. My name is Jenna Norris, as you just stated, and I coordinate the Governor's Water Augmentation, Innovation, and Conservation Council. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I will be sharing a brief update with you all on the recent activities of the council as well as the council's committees. Next slide. I wanted to start this presentation just quickly going over our website, which houses a lot of great information and namely all of the past meeting materials for the council and the 4 committees of the council. So if you look on the right-hand side of your screen at that navigation pane, you'll see that there's council activities. If you were to click on council activities, for example, you would be able to access all of the past meetings with the meeting recordings and presentations and any additional documentation that was shared during that meeting. The setup is the same for all of the committees. So I did just want to share that. And there's also documents for the council and all of the committees. And for example, under documents for the council, you'd be able to find the 2 annual reports for this Governor's Water Council, and those contain a lot of information in and of themselves. Other than that, I did want to point out that our meetings calendar is helpful if you're trying to keep an eye on upcoming meetings. So if you were to go to October, for example, since we're nearing the end of September, you'll see that we have 2 meetings scheduled next week and the following week. And so all of our upcoming meetings are posted there usually at least a month in advance. And the login information for those meetings is contained if you were to click on one of those. For example, non-AMA Groundwater Committee is coming up, so the agenda's been posted and there's the login information for that meeting. So I did just want to quickly share that. Moving back to the presentation. So the council met, thank you. The council last met on September 16th. That was their 3rd quarterly meeting of this calendar year. The next meeting for the council and the final meeting of 2021 will be December 9th from 10 to noon. On your screen right now is the agenda for that council meeting on the 16th. So the Chairman, Director Bishatsky, started off that meeting with an update on the Colorado River shortage. He did share much of the same information that Craig shared with you all this morning. I will just point out that Director Bishatsky did point out that in the August 24-month study, the minimal probable inflow line showed the elevation falling below 1030 by July of 2023. And as an adaptive management provision of the drought contingency plan, that required if the minimum probable elevation fell below 1030, that Arizona, California, and Nevada must consult with the Department of Interior to look at additional actions to protect Lake Mead from going below elevation 1020. So he did share a little bit about that. And then we moved on to committee updates, which I will go into more details about that in the subsequent slides. And the council meeting was ended with a presentation from Natalie Mast here in the room with me today, who shared a high-level overview of the management plan conservation requirements, honing in and highlighting the successes of the Agriculture BMP Advisory Committee in particular, and how that committee was able to advance agriculture best management practices program for the 5MP. Next slide. The first committee to share an update at the council was the non-AMA Groundwater Committee. which is chaired by Representative Griffin and Jamie Kelly. This committee is scheduled to meet on October 14th from 10 to noon. Again, the login information agenda has been posted, and that committee had not met in 2021, so they should have more of an update at that final December council meeting. Moving on to the Desalination Committee, with the highlights here on the slide, I'll talk through them. So that committee is chaired by Henry Day, and he provided to the council a update on where they had been. So that committee had last met on August 26th, and they had heard a presentation from ADWR counsel Jennifer Heim on brackish groundwater and Arizona law. Henry then provided to the council a very thorough overview of all of the work that that committee had done to date, covering everything they had worked on and explored, and then really moved into a detailed summary of that legal and regulatory subcommittee, which the work of that subcommittee had really culminated in the presentation given by Jennifer Heim at that August meeting. Henry stated that after a thorough exploration of the legal and regulatory barriers to the use of brackish groundwater, the committee had found that there was no legal or regulatory constraints specific to the use of that water in Arizona law. Brackish or poor quality groundwater is simply groundwater and subject to the same legal and regulatory constraints as such. Henry then rounded out his update with 2 recommendations brought forth to the council. The recommendations are on your screen. So the recommendations were to continue regulating brackish groundwater as it is, and that the committee be put on standby until recalled for additional work. These recommendations were both accepted by the council. Next slide. Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee is next. That is a committee chaired by Wade Noble. They had last met on August 3rd and heard a presentation from ADWR Senior Research Hydrologist Keith Nelson, during which he shared about opportunities in certain areas of the state to enhance the natural recharge process, specifically highlighting Nogales, Arizona as an example, that already benefits from periodic renewable flood recharge. And then he moved up to Prescott AMA and talked about the potential for enhanced recharge in Granite Creek. The committee engaged in a pretty full discussion following his presentation and concluded that it would take time to fully flesh out this topic of stormwater recharge, but they plan to continue exploring that in subsequent meetings. The Storage Site Subcommittee of the Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee has had some successes of late, so Wade shared about those. That committee has successfully delivered the joint ADWR and State Land Department 2021 report. That report here is on your slide. It's titled Potential Water Storage Sites on State Trust Land. It's linked as well. This report was required by House Bill 2249 and includes 331 potential storage sites on state trust land. ADWR staff is currently working to finalize and incorporate comments into a draft guide to underground water storage site selection. The draft is linked on this slide, and that is intended to accompany that report mentioned previously that was just delivered to the legislator and governor. Finally, the post-2025 AMA's co-chairs, Cheryl Lombard and Warren Tenney, shared an update with the council. This committee has been very busy and had met twice already since the last council meeting in July. In that July council meeting, they had laid out their work plan moving forward to address the identified issues that were captured in an issue brief that committee had put out earlier this year. So their plan to tackle those issues is to focus on 3 identified issues listed on your screen: groundwater and the Assured Water Supply Program. That issue was delved further into by ADWR Chief Hydrologist Jeff Inwood and ADWR Deputy Counsel Aisha Vora on June 22nd. We then had a presentation on unreplenished groundwater demand on August 10th, which was given by myself and Natalie Mast. And then most recently, the committee met and heard about the hydrologic disconnect on September 9th. That presentation was structured a bit differently in that we heard about that issue from 3 different angles, really. So I gave a presentation, Krista McJunkin from SRP gave a presentation, and Vivian Bahi from CAGR gave a presentation. That committee will continue to meet into the over the next few months. The next meeting is scheduled for October 5th, during which the committee will hear a presentation on concepts to address the issue of Prescott AMA exempt wells. Login information for that meeting is already posted and linked on your slide. And then the committee meets again on October 27th, and the plan for that meeting is to begin diving into some of the solutions and discussion topics raised following those 3 meetings that we talked about. So the plan is for the next few months to start fine-tuning the most realistic strategies and solutions and bring them forward to the council. I know that that was a lot. Next slide. I think it gives a taste for how busy the council and committees have been. My contact information is here on the slide. If you ever have any questions or comments on the council and committees, please feel free to reach out to me. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate your presentation. Do the members have any questions for Jenny? I would like to indicate that the Pinal County Water Augmentation Authority has undertaken basically a desalination study specific to the Pinal AMA. I was hoping that all the information that was generated by the desal committee, will that be available for general use by the as part of the study?
Yes, so everything that the Desalination Committee has generated, or presentations that they were given, et cetera, will all be on our website. It's already published. If you would like, I can gather up any final documents or things that were put out. A lot of that information is going to be contained in presentations, but I can share the link with you. And I would also say that just going to the website and looking at the Desalination Committee, everything that committee has produced thus far is published there.
Thank you. One other question related to the long-term water augmentation. Will they, on the runoff storage, will they delve into the legal aspects of that concept of underground storage from runoff?
Yes, absolutely. That was some of the discussion points raised following Keith's presentation, where the point was raised that it would, that needs to be fully explored, and any potential concerns really fleshed out before moving forward. And the committee decided that we would continue hearing presentations and explore what is possible, and also identify what needs to be better understood to move forward. So that is definitely in the forefront of the committee's mind when looking at that topic.
Thank you, Jenna. Once again, do any of the members have any further questions for Jenna? Hearing none, we'll move on then to the management plans update by Ms. Mast. Natalie, you're up.
All right, thank you, Chairman Collins and members of the council. And good morning. Thank you for having me today. My name is Natalie Mast. I am the AMA director responsible for the management plans here at ADWR. Today I'm going to be providing some information on upcoming milestones for the 5th management plans, and talk about what the next steps are for the GUACs and for public comment on those plans. Next slide, please. Many of you have seen this statute probably many times before at this point, but I wanted to call attention to this. The statutes for the management plans indicate that those plans should contain the mandatory conservation programs for each active management area designed to reduce withdrawals of groundwater and thus move each AMA toward its goal. The same statute lays out requirements for a series of 5 management plans, and we're currently working to draft and then adopt the 5th plans in that series. Next slide, please. This timeline lays out a little bit of our development process here. So this says 2020 here, but we actually started our development, our first work group meetings in mid-2019. So we've been working on this for over 2 years now. We held over 30 meetings of our work group and subgroups to discuss and develop concepts for the 5th management plans. Those concepts are all posted on our website on our concepts page. We'll make sure to drop the link to that in the chat here for you all. That concepts page contains information about each concept for what's going to be updated in the 5th management plans as compared to the 4th. It contains data about those concepts, links to each meeting where those concepts were presented, and also any stakeholder feedback that we may have received in writing about those concepts, including through our questionnaires after each of those meetings. So there's a significant amount of information on that concepts page already. And in addition to all of that, there is also kind of a template for the draft regulatory language that will be used to write those concepts into each management plan. So please do, we kind of used Phoenix throughout that, but that language will be adapted and kind of used as the same structure for each AMA for the regulatory language for those programs. So I would really encourage you all to familiarize yourself with the concepts on that page if you haven't already. There's a lot of really good information there, and it really reflects a lot of those conversations that we had through that work group process. So right now we're working to incorporate those concepts into full draft plans for each AMA. So we plan to publish some initial drafts of those plans early next year. We will then discuss those plans with the GUACs and request recommendations from each of the GUACs, and then we'll begin our promulgation or legal adoption process. That legal adoption process, I'll show on a later slide, it does take a significant amount of time. We are doing it for 5 AMAs, so we want to be able to start that at the beginning of next year. So I'll provide a little extra information on the timing there in a future slide. But with that timing, with completing the adoption of each of the 5 5th management plans next year, that allows those conservation requirements that we've developed to go into effect on January 1st, 2025. Next, and then one more note there, when those go into effect, since this is the last management plan that is defined in statute, those conservation requirements remain in effect until the legislature determines otherwise. Next slide, thank you. So this is just a screenshot of the concepts page that I mentioned. It looks like McKenna dropped that link into the chat for me. Thank you. We really just wanted to kind of show you what this looks like. There is a drop down for each sector and sub drop downs under there, kind of going through each concept and going into the regulatory language. So again, I would just really encourage you to visit that page to familiarize yourself with the information there. Next slide, please. The role of the GUAC with regards to the management plans that role is established in statute. And that role is to comment on those draft management plans for the active management area before they are promulgated by the director. So I'll show a timeline of that promulgation process in a little bit, but what we're going to be requesting of you all ahead of that promulgation process is feedback, comments, and recommendations on the draft management plan for the Pinal AMA. Next slide, please. So here's where we give you information about that timeline. So we do plan to seek recommendations from the GUAC on that draft management plan at the next meeting of the council. So that full draft incorporating those concepts that I mentioned earlier will be published in January. We will send an email with a link to each member, but if you would like a hard copy instead, just let us know and we'd be happy to provide that. In that kind of January to February timeframe, we would really appreciate if you would review that plan. I'd be happy to, between now and then, meet individually with any of the members to answer questions or talk through any of your more specific feedback. And we do ask that the council be prepared to discuss and make recommendations on that plan at that next meeting of the council. I understand that this is a fast timeline, it's an aggressive timeline, but again, because of the timing of that promulgation process, we do need to move forward with this fairly quickly. So we are working really hard to incorporate the concepts and the legal language into each AMA kind of faithfully to what we discussed in those public meetings. We don't anticipate that there's going to be any significant surprises for folks if they've reviewed that concepts page and have been following along with that process. So next slide, please. So what you see laid out here is the management plan's promulgation process, or the legal adoption process for those plans. This process is laid out in statute. So kind of not on this timeline here, we plan to publish initial drafts of those 5/5 management plans in January. Have an opportunity for comment from stakeholders and from the GUACs, and then we will publish an updated draft incorporating those comments and those bits of feedback as appropriate. So we'll publish an updated draft, and with that updated draft, we will publish a notice of hearing. The notice of hearing opens the formal comment period on the management plan, and that formal comment period ends at 5 p.m. on the day of the hearing. So during that formal comment period, anyone can submit comments to the department in writing, or they can attend the hearing to provide verbal comments on the management plan. Within 30 days of the hearing, ADWR issues a summary of findings addressing the comments that were received during that formal comment period. And we may, at that time, elect to adopt the plan as is or with modifications, or we can elect to go back to additional rehearing or review and make additional modifications. Once the plan is adopted, ADWR sends notices of those conservation requirements to all right holders, all regulated parties in the AMA. And that, from the date of that notice, the conservation requirements may go into effect anytime after 2 years after those notices go out. So when I talk about this kind of long timeline, our deadline here is having those conservation programs in effect on January 1st, 2025. So we need to be completing the legal adoption process for all 5 of these 5th management plans by the end of next year. Next slide, please. So with that, I do thank you for your time and for those of you who have participated in various ways throughout this process. We know it's been an intensive process, but we really appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten so far, and I would be glad to take any questions or comments now.
Thank you, Natalie. Do the members have any questions for Natalie on her presentation? Natalie, I do have one quick question. I'm going to say at the last turf breakout meeting, there seemed to be a bit of dialogue back and forth between or regarding the golf courses that have been in place since what, before 1984, and those prior to, post that, after that, and the potential inequity between the allocations between the two types of courses. Has that moved any further down the road?
So I don't have a specific update on that at this time. We are continuing to have conversations with individual golf courses, and in many cases, probably the most appropriate path forward for many of them is going to be through the administrative review type processes to make sure that the reductions in the allotments that those courses are seeing are feasible for those courses in their particular situations.
Thank you, Natalie. Once again, do any of the members have any further questions for Natalie on her presentation? Hearing none, we will move on to item number 8, excuse me, which is call to the council. Do any of the members of the council have any questions, comments, or concerns they'd like to express? Hearing none, we'll move on to item.
Mr. Collins, Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
I just more of a comment. I thought that the stakeholders group here in the Pinal AMA had a really good meeting yesterday. That should be online for anybody that would like to see it tomorrow. I think it should be online by tomorrow. And then there was a PowerPoint presentation by Nathan Miller, Terry Sue Rossi, and Jessica Fox that will be available as well. So if anybody requests that, reach out to me and I'll get you a copy of it.
Thank you, Supervisor Miller. Any of the other members wish to make a comment, questions, or concerns? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 9, call to the public. Is there anyone from the public who would wish to make any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none and seeing none in the chat box, then we will move on to item 10, which is adjournment. I will call this meeting to adjourn at 10:57. Thank you all for participating. And any of the other staff, thank you for being our resource people. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Stay safe, guys.